back in my day, I did have a protein container I would take with me everywhere. And you know how sometimes you just get through drinking something and toss it in the back of your car?
Yeah.
It grew, I think it became sentient because the smell never actually escaped the bottle, but yet somehow it did. Like it was subliminally implanting its own sentience into my mind saying, you smell me. And I'm like, who?
Is it
Like,
kind of like the third of a pizza I found in my van today?
Very, very close to that, except much more disgusting because you have to...
More?
More disgusting.
I don't know how long this pizza's been in there.
That's understandable, but you're just going to throw away the pizza box. You see, I still try to salvage the
it
bottle.
wasn't in the box.
Oh my God, no.
Just a rogue pizza.
It was 3 pieces of pizza. Like, I opened the passenger side door of my van, and I'm like, what is this weird, misshapen, funny colored triangle? Oh. And then I poked it with something and realized they used to be 3 slices of pizza.
What have they
also,
become?
when did I have pizza in my van? I've not driven my van in like maybe a month. Like, you have to open the passenger side door to see the pizza. And the thing is, there's been 3 people that's rode passenger in my van, and they never once said, hey, what's with the pizza in the floor?
Hey, everybody. I'm Dane Holland. And am I going to go to jail for drawing a vampire bending over?
I'm Austin Shazam Pfeiffer, and imagine being immortal forever.
I'm Marcus, the body shop chopper, known as I'm Electric Man.
I'm Austin Tiny Zent. And do you smell it?
Ooh, I do, unfortunately. And I hope everybody that listens to Nerd It Through the Grapevine, a podcast where 4 best friends gather weekly to talk about our favorite parts of past, present, and future nerd culture, don't smell it.
You have to smell it. Because they say our memory and smells are very closely tied together.
That is real, dude.
Yeah, super real.
I hate that.
You
I
can,
love it.
Like, I found one of my father's sweaters that he wore every day.
Uh-huh.
Summer, fall, winter. It's a 3-button, ugly V-neck Izod that they probably don't even make anymore, and it's super scratchy. I hate it, but I love it. And pull it out of the box, and I smell it, and I can smell his cologne, even though he's not been with us since I was 8 years old. And sometimes it also works inverse, like we associate different smells with different places. Like grease and kind of food smell, I could associate with work. Or like metal shavings and oils, stuff like that. I can associate with the factory that I worked at. And so I was walking around work, and they were making these blueberry scones. And it made me think of my mother. She liked blueberry Pop-Tarts, not the frosted ones, and she put butter on the top. Yeah, the unfrosted blueberries with the butter. Do it. It's delicious. You got to toast them. And that made me think of other smells and things from our childhood. And do we know what was up with those fat pencils in kindergarten? You can't write with those.
Yeah,
But they smelled like wood.
They did.
the jumbo pencils.
Yeah, the jumbo pencils.
Like
Why
what?
was that a thing?
Novelty, baby. We were small.
Or was it so you could...
But you
like,
write like crap with it.
Was it to actually train your hand strength to hold a normal pencil? Because once you got to the normal pencil, it felt like nothing.
No, I think
No.
it was just kids just wanted it because it was a big pencil.
I mean, they also had bendy pencils,
No,
And
too.
so the parents got it for
We
them.
had to have them when I was in
What?
kindergarten.
Wait,
It was
really?
a requirement to have those stupid fat pencils.
I don't know if I was never required to have one.
that.
Yeah. Well, I know like some of my younger friends, I asked them today, I'm like, did you have to use those stupid fat pencils when you was in like school? I was like, no, I don't even know what you're talking
It's
about.
like self-defense.
If I remember right, they were made by Ticonderoga.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think they were, and I could still
Is that the
remember...
steakhouse?
No, that's Ponderosa.
Okay,
Ticonderogas were the really bright yellows with
They're
the really
so
bright
cold.
green.
Yeah. scratch and sniff stickers. We were very smell oriented as children, but that has nothing to do with my actual topic.
Okay.
My actual topic is It. Well, it kind of does because I first read It when I was 8 years old. So obviously I remember very little about that particular novel.
That's very young to read a horror book about a
I was
killer
reading
clown,
Stephen
right?
King at that point.
That's
I read
amazing.
way beyond my reading level.
Still do.
of normal. I still do, but
I've listened to Tiny's Terrible Tabs. I mean, you still do reading beyond the level that a man your type should do.
well, I mean that may be true. But that being said, I've just finished the book again today. When I was a child, the book terrified me. And so I got to thinking about the differences between the new remakes versus the Tim Curry TV miniseries versus the novelization. And it's very apples to oranges, even between all three of them. The newer ones are more close to the source material, but what I didn't remember is how in the novel it's very non-linear. There's a constant jumping back and forth from adulthood to childhood, whereas in both of the film adaptations there's a defined split. This is childhood, this is adulthood, whereas the book it's all mixed together because if you remember, when they were adults, they couldn't remember anything that went on as when they were children.
I've never read it, so I don't remember that.
Well, have you seen the movie?
The new one.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the original one. It was too spooky.
The new one actually doesn't give them like that foggy amnesia type thing going on.
It does a little bit when they first meet back up with Mike. They don't go into much detail in the movies.
But the Tim Curry one actually like took them completely out of even knowing what Derry was about and like all that that time they had there, and then just talking to Mike on the phone, that
they almost didn't remember who Mike was,
and they're like Mike from Derry, and boom, everybody's remembering back to their childhood.
Yeah,
when they,
that's how it
scary.
happened in the book too. Like it took them a few minutes of talking to Mike to even remember that Mike existed. But the kind of interesting part about the book is they go from scene to scene, from childhood to adulthood and back and forth. So you see the parallels of its return versus when it was there when they were children. So it's very cool. You see how they mirror each other and how it differs as well. There are some parts of the book that are very hard to get through. I had to walk away from it for a couple of days at one point when it got to the boy that was killing the animals, because that was just one of the most horrific things I've ever read. I mean, it literally made you hate this person so much because of just the torturous, vile things he was doing, because he was psychotic. He genuinely was. And there's some other rough parts of the book, but as you're reading it, you kind of understand why it's there, even though you may not necessarily agree with it. Like the one very controversial part of the book, I'm sure you've all heard about it. Yeah, I feel like it really could have done without that.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to get through that part too, because I'm like, I don't want to read this, but I want to get the whole grasp of the story. But it was just the way it all mirrored and paralleled was actually pretty fascinating, because like when they come back to Derry, some of their old wounds from when they were children, from bullies and the previous incursion with it, actually reappeared on their bodies along with their memories, because they would slowly remember. So all the childhood scenes, it's all in their memories. And there's a gratuitous amount of the N-word throughout the book. That is another very hard thing to read. But it's also denoting the time that it takes place in, because it takes place in the 50s and in the 80s. And the use of that word was way more prevalent. Not to justify the use of that word. It is an awful, vile word, and no one should ever say it to anyone, But at the end of the day, it is a very fantastic story. And if you're a Stephen King fan, or if you just like reading and want to try something a little different, I'd say you should try it because it's actually a very good book.
Yeah, because the movie, I liked I never saw the Tim Curry. Did you say the Tim Curry thing was a TV series?
Yes.
Yeah, it was
That wasn't a
originally
movie?
TV miniseries.
Yeah, and they basically just compiled them all into the movie.
Oh.
Basically, like,
Yeah.
and they would just have like a fade out, and then they'd fade back in.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that was even a TV
See,
series.
Yeah.
me too. I was the same way.
Okay, it was always too spooky for me as a
Well,
kid.
that's why
To me,
a
it was
lot
always
of the
two big, giant VHS thingies.
yeah. Well, like when you watch it, a lot of the imagery is kind of nerfed.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
You know, I mean, they still want to give you the idea of the spookiness, but they didn't want it to be like utterly terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you drop the newest rendition of it back into, the 90s when that come out, that would be horrifying. That would not be something you want to see on the TV.
Oh yeah, just like my mom. She remembers back when what was it called? The Day the Earth Stood Still. They redid the movie with Keanu Reeves, I think several years ago. But The Day the Earth Stood Still was just a really classic sci-fi alien invasion style movie. And looking back on that now, that movie's really like kind of corny, But the problem is, they didn't have anything else, so it blew their minds. So if we imagine going even further than that and taking like something like the most modern rendition of it and playing it for somebody in like the mid 60s, like imagine what it would do to their brains.
Yeah.
Like,
I thought the newer one of it was silly. Like, I thought it was more silly. But then again, maybe that's just because I'm older and...
Well, I mean, I can kind of see how you can get there.
Because like when he's shaking that dismembered hand, like waving at them,
Well,
that was the funny. That was really funny. I liked that.
What it does is it feeds on your fears. So whatever you're seeing, and it sparks that imagination because it feeds on imagination and fear.
Right.
What's really interesting is parts of the book is actually written from its perspective.
Oh,
Which is super cool.
that's cool.
Yeah, it puts you in the mind of this being that feels like it's immortal and it's the only thing, and how it's so good to feed, and adults typically are too difficult to feed on because they're more worried about bigger, more complex issues, whereas like children, they're afraid of things like clowns and spiders and this and that, whereas as adults it's like we're worried about insurance and taxes and things like that. It even says that in the book.
Terrible.
And it's just like, wow. And it's like, how could you terrify somebody about insurance? I mean, come on.
I'm sorry to tell you, but if it did exist, it would probably take the form of a frog for Dane. And it would be a situation to where it would be a completely and it loves to do this. It would be a completely normal person that comes to order food at Cheddar's. And, they sit down and they ask for just some water, and then they start putting sugar in it, and some flies start gathering around the water, and they start kind of just nabbing the flies, and you start thinking, wow, that's weird. And then all of a sudden you collect can I get your order? And then they just look up at you, and their throat expands out at you, and then you just go,
Hate that. Hate that.
And that's actually a pretty good description of how it functions. Like that happens, and then you blink again, like, what the hell am I looking at? And it's a normal person. So it's yeah.
And then
that's
it's
a very good
He
description.
can manifest your own imagination.
yeah. Then it'll wait. It waits because it allows your brain to explore further options on what's going on with it, all the while feeding off of that.
Oh, yeah, it makes the meal larger.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
and then he can actually reveal the true scary form, feed off of that pure fear that you thought was, okay, I was just imagining things. Oh my God, it's real.
Was the clown fear a big thing before it? I don't know how far back clown fears
It
go.
dated back to a few different things. It was actually, I think it has to do with how it came into this world, and they don't really talk too much about why the clown form is the clown form. They kind of leave
it does mention it in the book when you're actually from its perspective. He uses that a lot because it's a very universal fear for small kids. So it's a very popular form for him to use.
So it was like clown fear was a big thing before it was a
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know if that's, well, I know that spawned a lot of new clown fears for
I'm
people,
sure.
but I didn't realize that people have been afraid of clowns for a long time.
See,
Well,
what
like-
I imagined it as...
like my sister. That's why she's afraid of clowns from the original.
Gotcha.
Me too, actually. I think it is shapeless, without form, just this, this force of living chaos in which it is.
Well, in the book, he does have a form, but it's very Cthulhu-esque to where if you see its true form, you go insane. Because in the novel, Bill's wife, Audra, she's a famous movie actress. She actually comes to Derry at one point in the book to see if her husband's okay, because like he just gets up and leaves and is like, hey, I gotta go home, I gotta go to Derry because of this promise I made as a kid, and doesn't explain the situation. So her, as a loving spouse, leaves, because they were in, I think, England, I don't remember exactly, in this other country filming a movie, and she just takes off to go find her husband, and it gets a hold of her using another person and shows her his true form, and basically she goes catatonic, like her mind is broken.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's another thing I didn't know.
High speed, low drag. If you like Stephen King, read the book, you'll have a good time, but there's some rough points.
Well, you see, speaking of rough points, thinking about movies that I have seen revolving around the comic book universe, being like the first one that I can remember being comic book based is going to probably be Blade. Blade was, my first introduction into what superheroes, from these comic books can look like on the big screen. And I'm not including like Superman and all those other things like that, because I saw that as a kid, but I didn't really appreciate it. I didn't have the mental capacity to like comprehend what I was looking at. So Blade was the one that did it for me, and it kind of just allowed me. Hold on, I'm going to readjust in my chair because
You're coming out of it.
I can't even breathe.
You're not even in the
correctly.
chair anymore.
It allowed me to see visual representations of these heroes that I was aware of because my brother had comic books. I'd seen Blade comic books. I'd also seen Ghost Rider comic books. He was a real big Marvel fan. But sometimes I miss out on things, and it kind of makes me question like just how into comic book stuff I really am, because it's like I don't want to be a poser, because I got made fun of a lot in middle school for being a poser, and I don't need to repeat it. Hold on, I'm smacking it,
Yep.
baby.
Get on that.
I don't
Yeah,
say
Daddy.
repeat, it's repeat. So
It's
I
just your
don't.
dialect.
I don't need to
Don't get
repeat.
embarrassed.
I've got a book that I picked up at Acquire the Fire circa 2006 that tells you how to not be a poser.
Oh, okay. That's probably pretty helpful. Yeah, I used to wear black clothes, just like all black, but not all the time. Like it was just whenever I felt like it, because I'm a human being. And people that wore all black all the time as a statement would have, like, of course, like all gathered around and be like, poser. Like, you're in 6th grade and you just thought that black went with black, so you wore it, and you're just really confused as to what you're posing as.
I feel like people who call other people posers, because I mean, even adults still do it, and it's ridiculous because they're trapped in their middle school brains. But I think it's because they fear that they themselves aren't as knowledgeable about what they love, so they've got to tell someone else they're a poser, because then that makes them be like, yeah, because I know what I'm talking about.
It's just insecurity.
Yeah.
I mean, I've called people a poser before, but it was more in a joke. Well, you poser.
Because I was flexing and held it there for a
Yeah.
while, and you're like,
Yeah,
yeah, no one's taking a picture.
I was taking pictures.
Oh,
Stupid poser. How
should-
dare you take
Yeah,
chances?
now we're
Yeah.
gonna have to
How
take
dare
them
you
down from
explore
the
your own
website.
persona?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Idiot.
And that's kind
jeez.
of was, yeah, I know, a big dumb stupid idiot.
Get back in that box that I've defined for you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Stupid.
You can't put baby in a corner. You can't put Shazam in a box.
Think outside the bun.
I mean, there's one way you can put me in a box, but Justin Timberlake explained that like years ago for everybody.
No.
So, step one is
You're bringing sexy back.
no in a box. So Shang-Chi
Oh,
is what I'm referring to on these characters that I missed, like Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I don't have any clue. I had no clue. I did some mild searching, and I just pulled up some facts and some things about it.
I just want to say thank you because I did see on Instagram a lady that I follow, for whatever reason, I'm blanking on her name. She's Asian American, and she's talking about that it's so great that she's now represented in a film like this. And I'm like, I've never heard of this either, and I meant to look it up. Now I don't have to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm glad I can help. It's actually starring an Asian actor.
Mm-hmm.
It is directed by an Asian director.
Cool.
So, and it's getting some high praise based off its initial release for how well versed in the actual styles of martial arts Marvel and Disney stuck to. Because researching the character of Shang-Chi, he is a master of several different weaponries, several different martial arts. He's considered in Marvel canon to be one of the best martial artists who ever walked the earth. And, through a lot of these sacred objects, much like Doctor Strange has in his universe, not really universe, it's Marvel universe, but like in his storyline, you get the mythical objects that he's able to use and power him up because he's already so proficient in fighting styles that he's also proficient in weaponry. So if he's proficient in the weaponry, of course, the enchanted weapons are going to be able to aid him. It seems like a cool story. It's coming out on September the 3rd, and
really
that's very
soon.
close.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing that. I feel like that will be a nice little addition to my comic book brain.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because I never knew anything about him. Never knew a thing.
We get to as comic nerds, you kind of get to this point where you're like, you feel like you know most of the characters, like you can't really be surprised by much, and then like all of a sudden there's this really hyped up like movie about a comic book character you had no idea existed. So it's this new kind of excitement. Like I know nothing of this character. Similar to Doctor Strange, really.
Yeah, blank slate.
I didn't know much. I knew Doctor Strange existed, and I knew there was magic involved, but I knew pretty much nothing about his character because I've always been more of a DC person. But I got to go into it, like you said, like with a blank slate. So I didn't have that preconceived comic book history of being able to dissect the whole thing as I watch it and be like, well, they got this wrong, why didn't they do this, blah, blah, blah. I got to just enjoy it as a superhero movie. And now he is my idea of that character, which, should lead me to read more comics.
At the same time, too, I haven't thought about this very often because it's just now coming out, though. This is the first generation being introduced to Harry Potter that would have absolutely no idea what Harry Potter would be in their own minds. Like if they pick up a book, they can't think of who Harry Potter is in their own character eyes.
Without seeing him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying now.
Like, this is the first generation that has no blank slate for what Harry Potter looks like.
Right. Because
I've never seen Harry Potter.
But you've seen what the character looks like in the glasses, right? In the Scar on the Head. And
As a wee young one.
But
Right.
haven't they always had the same art on the book though? Because there's book art.
Yeah, but book art's one thing because
Sure.
you have to imagine all the other characters. You've got hundreds of characters throughout these books that are introduced in and out, and you've got to develop your own way of finding out who they are. But if you see it on TV or you see it on the big screen first, you're going to have those people in your head now. Even the way they talk, that's how you hear them in your head.
which I feel like some people may like that and some may dislike it. Sometimes
Depends on
for
what
me-
I'm reading.
Right.
Depends on what I'm reading.
Yeah.
And if it's a good job and it sticks in my head that way, and it makes me want to make that character deeper in my repertoire, I can look back on it.
Right.
That
I'm
would be
afraid of heights and depths.
oh.
Yeah, go deeper into
Oh,
it.
sorry. I got scared for a second. I was like, we're not on a roller coaster. But I want to see that movie. And
Yeah.
there was another one as well.
What?
Yeah. Marvel's The Eternals.
Yeah, I don't know much about them either.
The Eternals. Like, it seems
Is
like
that Angelina Jolie or somebody?
yeah,
gonna be
she
in
said
She'll
it
be
is
in
she said it has been the most grandiose and amazing production she's ever been involved with.
Well, probably, man.
Yeah.
It didn't.
Yeah.
Well,
Then-
and
then he
it's
did it.
Marvel. Like, that's like the cutting edge of filmmaking at the moment.
I'm sorry, but Disney.
Marvel is Disney.
Right.
Disney and Marvel.
As is Lucasfilms.
Yeah. But I'm
Harvard.
just saying them in particular, because they're pumping them out on a scale much bigger than anybody else.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're breaking in more money than
How
anything else
large
could
of a
imagine.
pump are they using?
No, it's
I'm not
that-
sure.
If we had a scale,
We'll have
of
to go do some reconnaissance
like-
down in Georgia.
They're talking about the
pea
pump you get in the gym. They're talking
to an
about the pump you get in the
elephant,
arms when they
where would
lift
it
the
fall in there?
weights.
Would it be like more of a banana or more of a rocket ship?
I didn't hear anything because I heard him doing Arnold. Yeah.
So the Eternals are a fictional race of humanoids that appear in American comic books published by Marvel. They're described as an offshoot of the evolutionary process of humans because they were put here by, and you've heard these mentioned in several Marvel movies all throughout Forevers, but the Celestials. The Celestials actually made an offshoot of human evolution to protect Earth for all time. And this happened thousands of years ago.
Wasn't there one in Guardians of the Galaxy 2?
Yeah.
Wasn't his dad one?
Yes. His
Yeah.
dad was a celestial.
Egon? Is that his name?
Ego.
Ego.
Yeah.
Ego.
Ego. And they're there to protect against deviants.
Ego was not there to protect.
And
No.
the deviants are the changing people. They're the ones who are the bad guys in the Eternals kind of series of stuff. And it also is going to reference, like, if the Eternals are here to protect Earth, you know, why weren't they involved in the events of Endgame?
Mm-hmm.
And they take certain standpoints in the movie based on this, but it tells about it in synopsis. But I'm wanting to go blank slate because I'm already blank slate enough on it. I want to go just as bare bones as I can.
Mm-hmm.
But the release date for that's going to be November 5th. So it's very close for two very large production movies to be releasing.
Remember the 5th of November.
Oh, the gunpowder
The
treason
gunpowder
and plot.
treason and plot.
I can't see no damn reason that gunpowder treason should ever be not remembered.
Absolutely.
So you've got a very large array of people in this movie. I mean, Angelina Jolie and Selma Hayek, those are two that I know for a fact at one point that we would have to have the horn on, just because,
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, I mean, they were symbols, man.
Good looking
Kit
ladies.
Harington is supposed to be in it, correct?
I believe so.
I've heard that's just like I don't know if that's
Yes,
a rumor.
he is
he's
in it.
signed on for something. I don't know what
Ooh,
it is.
the Black Knight, I believe, is what I was told.
Yeah, but the guy that played Rob, he's in the Eternals.
Yeah, Daddy.
Really, both of them?
Yeah. And if they actually die,
Yeah.
they don't die. They're reborn.
Because they're eternal.
So that's what it's like to
They're
be
cosmic beings.
See, that's what I mean by immortal forever. Because the caveat of most immortality is
until you die, until you get killed.
I'm immortal unless. With them, it's I'm immortal forever. If they die, they're reborn. It's a constant respawn. So, and there's going to be, some battles going on that introduce planetary galactic threat kind of things that are going to be expanding into the furthering Marvel universe, such as the idea of characters as big as Galaxus or Galactus.
Galactus, yes.
Galaxus is a different character from a different place. But Galactus and the Planet Eater. So, I mean, it's going to get into that kind of stuff, which also further ventures into the Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer.
Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
So, and that's some stuff that we need some rehashing on screen that we've talked about before. We want to see that redone. We want to see it done better. And the Eternals are kind of like I guess they're like your random access memories. I guess they're the things that are keeping everything running while everything else on the surface is, doing its thing. Because if they're there for all of time, they know what needs to be done to keep the Earth going.
Right.
That one random event, that was probably beyond their scope, because I bet they're not only doing that protection of Earth at this point.
Right.
So that's why there's only so many of them.
Well, and they can take and make things much more on a massive scale, because when you're dealing with the Avengers, I mean, they're limited by, what they can do on Earth, basically. They're not really going off planet to do stuff. But you can take things like the Eternals, and all of a sudden now, it's like Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, they get to go, around the galaxy doing stuff, but they're not these, like you said, almost celestial-like beings. So you get to do some crazy stuff with these kind of characters that you go, okay, if the Avengers were put in charge of this situation, there's no way that they would survive it. And that's cool to be able to see the Avengers as like, man, these guys are unstoppable. This is amazing. And then you're like, oh, if they had to deal with these problems, they're nothing. They're just like a human being squashed by a giant.
So I guess the Eternals are like the good guys, huh?
Yes. That's their... as far as like what they're intended to be, they're defenders of Earth, and I don't
Right,
know.
so it's like the Avengers, but they're cosmic.
Right.
They have a different jurisdiction.
I bet there'll be some kind of, when you're at that level of power, though, I bet there's some kind of weird, like, good. You said good guys. Maybe not. Like,
Amoral, kind of.
like.
That would be hard to do,
It would.
it seems like.
Yeah. Like, they have
Especially
to make decisions like that.
Yeah.
Or like Thanos thought he was the good guy.
And also at the, same,
right.
at the same time too, like they had a really big purpose, and it's the deviants, like the change people, the ones that are there to like infiltrate, and coerce and manipulate the populace to actually destroy the Earth faster. And that's what they're there to combat.
Gotcha.
So, and they've been doing that for over 7,000 years. They've been on Earth doing. And just in the background, just nobody even knows about them.
I'm all for like a high-powered story.
Yeah.
I think it's time to level them up a little bit. Let's get a little bit bigger.
Yeah, because
grander in scope.
I mean, they already did enough of the good story in with that new What If series they came out with on Disney Plus.
It's awesome.
If you haven't seen What If, I'd also suggest watching it, because it doesn't matter if you know anything about it; it's going to retell it anyway.
Right.
So,
but it does help if you already know about it, because it makes things like that much neater, that it's so different from what you know.
My mind was on the wall. It blew my mind.
Something else that might blow your mind is something called the Comics Code Authority. Are you familiar, Marcus? Tiny?
No.
Austin, I know you are.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much about it you know.
I'll listen.
Okay. The Comics Code Authority...
Yeah, Daddy.
The Comics Code Authority, or CCA, was formed in 1954 as an alternative to government regulation for comics. So what had happened was there was this big epidemic of like public concern over scary, terrifying comics that portrayed this horror and death and gore and things. And people were like, they're turning our kids into these like just gore loving crazy people. And of course, like evangelicals, like a big part of the rage against this particular machine. Which is actually the opposite of what that band
was singing
No, it's
about?
actually the opposite of what the band would be about. So yeah, a mirrored version of what that would be. But anyway, this guy named Charles F. Murphy was put in charge of this whole thing, and it was a way to police material that comic books were producing, but it had nothing to do with the law. Like, it wasn't illegal to do this in comic books, but they were allowed to kind of go to publishers and be like, hey, this is now the standard for what comics have to meet.
On whose authority?
It was just the Comics Magazine Association of America were the ones that made it. So it's just this entity that it's not lawful. That's what's so weird about this. So that people came to like in front of everyone. It was like, hey, this is a problem, and this is how we're going to solve it. These publishers need to go through us to make sure that the Comics Code Authority says, yes, this book has been approved for publication for the consumption by youth.
I bet it was a deviant.
A deviant in the story?
Yeah, I bet it was
Eternals?
Yeah, I bet it was a deviant that did it.
It had to have been. Just to give you an idea, like I've got a list of things that I want to go through with you, probably all of them, just because of how ridiculous all of this is, of the things that this Comics Code Authority said comics can't have inside of them. And it just goes against everything you see in comics now, for the most part. Some of it
Was this golden
makes
for the
sense.
golden age of comics?
This was in 1954, so this was early.
Okay.
This was early on. So Superman was made in 38. So, but this goes beyond superhero comics. This is just comics in general, which has existed for a long time before Superman. So I would just want to go through this list and see what you guys, and stop me if I say one and you feel, I don't know, like it's grabbing you want to talk about how ridiculous it is. Crimes shall never be presented in such a way as to create sympathy for the criminal, to promote distrust of the forces of law and justice, or to inspire others with a desire to imitate criminals.
That's so subjective.
I know, exactly. Most of this is very subjective. If crime is depicted, it shall be as a sordid and unpleasant activity. So it should never be appealing, like what they're stealing. If they're stealing a big jewel, like all of a sudden it's like, well, no, we don't want anybody to be like, oh, yeah, I would want that too. It's got to be something, ridiculous. Policemen, judges, government officials, and respected institutions shall never be presented in such a way as to create disrespect for established authority. So you can't make anyone in authority look bad. That one is like, for me, that one right there is just the overarching umbrella for all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, they should never read Watchmen then.
Absolutely not. See, Watchmen would go against all of this, and it did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you can't tell people what to write
So,
about.
No.
This body of people.
Yeah.
This comic book authority,
Yes.
if you will. So is this just some people that got really bored, got together, and were like, how can we screw up comic books for everyone?
Basically, because they thought that comics were corroding the minds of the youth of the, just like, back when I did the pinball subject, like people thought that pinball and these kind of games were like destroying the youth.
So
Nowadays
like
it's
another
video games.
Satanic Panic, but with comic books instead.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that this authority is actually just like the neighborhood watch
Yes.
For comics.
for comics,
Yeah, but they were so
hate 'em.
public about it that they scared publishers into going against them, because now all of a sudden the public hears like parents, they see this Comics Code Authority stamp on comic, and there was actually a stamp on the cover of the comic that if it passed the code authority, it got the stamp. So now parents see that stamp and they're like, okay, this one's okay for my kid. And if they don't see the stamp on it, they're like, oh no, this is mature content. Like my children can't read this. So like, even though it wasn't anything to do with the law at all. And so now like publishers like Marvel and DC and stuff like that, they're like, well, how are we going to sell comics if parents aren't going to buy them for their kids? And also this made stores like not put them on their storefront without that stamp. This made up authority for comic books.
Oh,
Yeah.
atrocious.
Oh, I know. Criminals shall not be presented so as to be rendered glamorous or to occupy a position which creates a desire for emulation.
Oh, so the Joker in everything he's ever in now.
You can't have interesting villains at all.
No, that's exactly what this was. Like, no, villains cannot be appealing.
Do not let the reader see the perspective of why they're doing bad things, because those are bad things, and they're bad because they're bad.
'Cause
And we
they're
said
bad.
them.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but during that particular time, like Batman, for instance, the Joker got real childish and more or less just pranky
Yeah,
instead
he had
of
to.
like criminal mastermind and stuff because of this.
Yep.
Bull.
Oh, a lot of characters were dumbed down for this reason. In every instance, good shall triumph over evil, and the criminal punished for his misdeeds. So
In every instance.
every single instance, never can the villain succeed in anything, which is teaching these kids that it's doing the opposite of what they were wanting to do, because it's teaching kids that, like, no, the good guys always win. Nothing bad ever ends up happening because of bad people.
Well, how do they explain Batman's parents then?
That was
How
before.
could that possibly?
That was before
work out to good?
this happened, because they probably would have said, like, no, like these good people can't die for Batman to be born. So with the Comics Code Authority, if it would have been before Batman was made, we might not even have Batman. Scenes of excessive violence shall be prohibited. Scenes of brutal torture, excessive, blah, blah, blah. So, like, anything gruesome can't be there. Like, and there's even a bunch of comics that, like, this is kind of their jam. Like, this is, and they're not meant all for kids, but they're still not selling because stores aren't putting them up because they're cartoon books that they feel like they can't sell.
There's blood in it.
There's blood in it.
You can't
You can't
read
do it.
that. There's blood.
Like if that organization stuck around longer, we would have never had Ninja Turtles. We would have never had Spawn. Like if there's like you would have never had Blade. You would have never had Ghost Rider. There's nothing not brutal about these stories.
Yeah.
They're just brutal, gory stories.
It's the appeal to it because it's for an older audience, not all of them for kids.
brutal, gory stories. That's kind of flows off the tongue.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it really doesn't make any sense other than the fact that it's like, well, we have to make people think that these institutions, these respected institutions, to use their words, are like, that's where morality derives from.
They are infallible.
Yeah, you can't have morality unless you believe in our stuff.
Exactly.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's what drove this whole thing. Here's a ridiculous one. No comic magazine shall use the words horror or terror in its title.
Okay.
Yep. All scenes of horror, excessive bloodshed, gore, blah, 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 shall not be permitted. All unsavory or gruesome illustrations shall be eliminated. Inclusion of stories dealing with evil shall be used or shall be published only where the intent is to illustrate a moral issue, and in no case shall evil be presented alluringly, nor so as to injure the sensibilities of the reader. Scenes dealing with or instruments associated with Walking Dead, so zombies, torture, vampires and vampirism, ghouls, cannibalism, and werewolfism are prohibited. Comic books, this authority will not...
That stuff's a cult.
Exactly.
It is of the devil. We don't need to be teaching our chillins.
So, yeah, this authority was like, you can't have zombies, you can't have werewolves, you can't have vampires, and you can't have cannibals. Like, they're taking all of this, like, mythic, lore of this whole genre and eliminating it from this entire medium.
It's like if you took my mom's old book club and they said, hey, what should Austin be allowed to watch on television?
Right. Yeah.
Whatever I want.
And then young me would, of course, never have been allowed to watch literally anything. I would have got to watch Wheel of Fortune and whatever game show was on the television. I would have never gotten to see any of the stuff that I used
us
to.
as old men now, that's all we want to watch.
Family Feud is life, man.
Profanity, obscenity, smut, vulgarity, or words or symbols which have acquired undesirable meanings are forbidden. Who gets to decide what's
didn't
undesirable?
say scrum.
No, they didn't say scrum. We can have all the scrum we want in our comics.
Everybody get some scrum.
They did say smut, though.
They did, but
Not scrum.
not scrum.
Not scrum, though.
Nudity
Not scrum,
in
though.
any form is prohibited, as is indecent or undue exposure. Suggestive and salacious illustration or suggestive posture is unacceptable. You can't even bend over, like you can't draw like a woman bent over picking up a piece of paper in a comic under this authority, and it fit the bill.
I wish they would write their own comic. Like,
It'd be the
y'all
worst
write
comic
your
ever.
comic
Yeah,
according to your little laws, and we'll
Yeah.
see how good it is.
Yeah.
Why don't you write your own comic?
yeah.
You know what it would probably be called?
Vanilla.
That Man.
That yeah.
No, 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 no,
That
no, no,
man.
no, 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 That Man.
Clothed figures shall never be presented in such a way as to be offensive or contrary to good taste or morals. Which who gets to decide that?
Those people.
These people.
Those
get to
people.
decide
That's
what's-
the whole thing.
Yes.
That's what this is all about.
The same people that would send a child home from school and prevent them from having an education because they have got shorts on that are too short, too high above the knee. You got to go home. You're distracting people.
And here's one that while the code did not specifically forbid depictions of drugs, a general clause prohibited, in quotes, all elements or techniques not specifically mentioned herein, but which are contrary to the spirit and intent of the code and are considered violations of good taste or decency.
So, so they're literally the authority. By them saying we are the authority, they don't even want to be questioned on what they think is right. They want to just say have that blanket term there. So if they ever find something that they read through that they're like, I don't like that, they can just cherry pick. That is a cherry picking. Every one of these things they've said is a cherry picking blanket term that allows them free reign to just manipulate however they want to the comic book
And that's
industry.
exactly
I
what
mean,
they
is
did.
it just for kids? Or was this just
This
like
is for
all?
comic books in general. If it's considered a comic book, like Mad Magazine used to be a comic book, but they changed over to being Mad Magazine, so now they can be sold on magazine stands without anybody batting an eye because it's a magazine. It's not a comic book. So they got through with that, or Mad wouldn't have ever existed because this is Mad's whole shtick is going against this code. So they just switched to a magazine as opposed to a comic book.
To have to avoid putting that stupid sticker on there.
Which,
too.
I mean, the first...
This is highly censored material, everyone, just so you know. But this is the one you want to spend your money on.
Exactly.
Right.
The one that we've procured for you.
Ridiculous.
The first issue of Spider-Man wasn't like the comics code didn't give the stamp of approval to it, but the second one did, and from then on pretty much did. Whenever Stan Lee would write a book, he said like he never like considered the comics code authority when he was writing anything. Either it passed and they gave the stamp of approval, or they didn't and he didn't put the stamp on it, sold it anyway. But for him, he was like, he knew his audience was kids. He wasn't making anything overtly like violent or sexual. He was just making his stories the way he wanted to. And if this authority was like, no, we're not going to give you the seal, he was like, I don't care. Like, you might put it on the next one. So they would just sell it anyway.
How long were they in operation?
About to tell that here at the end, actually.
Sorry.
Way too long.
By the early 2000s, publishers bypassed the CCA, and Marvel Comics abandoned it in 2001. By 2010, only 3 major publishers still adhered to it: DC Comics, Archie Comics, and Bongo Comics.
2010?
2010.
Wow.
Yes.
Come on,
like
DC,
just over
why?
10 years ago, these like major publishers still adhered to the stupid rules. I mean, some of these were amended like through the years. Like some of them were more lenient, but still like honoring anything that this code used to stand for would be enough for me as a publisher to just throw, 2 middle fingers at him and be like, I'm doing what I want to do. And that's what they ended up doing as society became a little bit more like, yeah, this stuff's fine. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can show somebody getting, I don't know, stabbed with a knife and the kids aren't going to go, well, I can go do this. But, and the video game conversation is around the same thing as this. But
Sure, yeah.
I just wanted to kind of look into the history of comics and how ridiculous at one point this was, because I couldn't imagine it now.
It was a very large, bold point for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's one thing to like worry about, how we advertise or market to children.
Right.
I think that's a good, intellectual endeavor for some people to have.
Right.
But when it comes to adults, who's telling who what we can and can't read? That's when it's like, okay, who are you?
Yeah, because people of all ages have bought comics for forever, but these people just assumed like all comics are made for children and they cannot have these things to them. We are deciding what is moral and what is allowed for children to view and what's good for their lives. And it made me furious, like reading those things, because of how much I love comics and how much I've like even learned from comics and stuff like that. It just blew my mind as to how like our world would be so much different right now if this meant more to people. Like, I don't know. I just hate the Comics Code Authority. There is some little part of it that's like, okay, good.
Plus, you'd think that some
censoring
authors probably
things.
got away with it
Well, they
after a
did.
while.
Yeah.
Like, the 50s. I mean, sure, I can see how in that time it would have been, our culture was just more rigid at that point,
Exactly.
right after the heels of World War II.
Right.
So
Then once you hit the 70s and stuff, like it started being a little more lenient with it. But
Yeah.
I'm just glad it's gone.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I don't think it should have
You don't
ever
need no
existed in the
code.
first place.
Come on.
No, absolutely
It's
not.
very like nanny-like. Like
Yes.
you can't decide
Maybe, like,
what's
age
good
groups.
and
Yeah.
right for you to read.
Right.
So
Like
I'm gonna
18
do
and
it
up.
for you.
that's all you gotta do.
There's a stack of
mature
comic
content.
books right next to you on this table right here. Why don't you grab 2 or 3 of them and see if they even have that stamp on there?
Rip it off.
Let's see.
Yep.
Oh,
This one does right here. Comics Code Authority right there at the top right.
yep.
Approved by the Comics Code Authority. And this is from 1987. This comic is.
Cool.
Is this comic from 1987?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's a
It
what-
is,
it's one
yeah.
of the, it's one of the first what if retellings of like Shazam.
Cool. In my head, yeah, Shazam wasn't depicted like this until more recent years, but that's really cool. But yeah, anyway, first-hand proof, everybody. Y'all can see it out there in the listening world with your ears.
Use your imagination.
Use your
Ima-
ear balls.
Imagination.
Ears have eyes.
Imagination podcast. Imagination.
So last week, Tiny, you mentioned on Tiny's Terrible Tabs something about body modifications and specifically
I did.
an elf ear procedure.
Yeah. Performed by Sample Von Cyborg. Yes, I remember this.
Legality in question.
Okay, well, I stumbled across this guy. I don't know how I get suggested such things.
Did you get hurt?
No, I didn't.
He got his balance right before he fell.
Yeah, but oh my gosh, some people will just go to great lengths, and I have to admit to having some sort of reactions to some of these different body modifications. But I kind of did want to focus on specific ones, like where people try to look like nerdy stuff, like orcs and elves.
Okay.
Oh my God! This guy cut his nose off, y'all.
Yeah, I've seen
What?
that guy.
This guy cut his nose off.
To look like an orc?
Yeah,
Yes,
he's wild looking.
it makes me sweat.
Yeah, like my pits.
Yeah, well,
don't
I was
like
looking
this.
at his Instagram.
That
and-
kind of made me dizzy thinking about not having a nose.
Well, you haven't seen it,
Are you
and I
gonna
kind of
show
want
us?
you to see it. Yeah.
no, don't make me react to things on recording.
Well, you've just got to see it.
We'll post this to our Discord if those listening would like to go see. And now I'm real upset because that's not makeup, that's real. I hate it.
And so
I hate it.
so his skin is like completely tattooed over, like to look. You know, and I'm trying not to judge, but I can't help but I have a visceral reaction to his nose
Right.
being sawed off.
Yeah. There was another guy, he wanted to look like Red Skull. Oh, yeah, I've seen him. He did all the modifications and tattooing and all that to look like the comic book depiction of Red Skull.
I don't like this, not one bit, not one
No.
single bit. He's got his teeth filed. He's got.
He's got these big. Well, he's also had. I think he's had some work done on his upper, like his facial structure as well.
It's like an implant.
Because when you look at him from the side, like, well, here's like a video of him.
Is that before or after
Dude.
he had the tusks put in? I can't really tell.
Well,
from
he
here.
doesn't have tusks. There's actually another guy that has tusks put in.
Yeah.
He actually probably looks a little cooler than this guy, I think. This guy's name is the one that we're looking at that got his nose actually cut off. I just typed it in. Why can't I remember? Fernando de Oliveira is the name of this guy. I did read another article on that other guy where he had like tusks actually installed and he was getting teeth, like surgically input into his head.
Health
Well,
wise.
I mean, that's something that
Well,
they do for dentures
You know,
and stuff anyway.
that's one thing I was thinking. Like, how cool is it that he's a big enough fan of Lord of the Rings to like do that to his face? Is that what we're looking at here, or is there something different?
I mean, honestly, I can comprehend seeing a style and wanting to emulate it. I cannot, on the other hand, think of myself seeing a race of creature or different species, mind you, and say that's how I'm supposed to look. Like, I'm supposed to not have a nose
Right,
and
like,
have.
I would scare myself. You'd wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and be like,
you
ah!
Hell, I do that in the
forget for a
first
minute.
place. Like whenever I grow out my beard and I wake up in the morning and I look at myself in the mirror as I'm passing by it to go take a piss, like it's startling because it doesn't look like a person should.
But we've also got this like we are very accepting people. So it's like if you
for
want to
sure.
if you want to do something like this to yourself, like I don't live your life day to day, so I don't have to wake up looking like that. But at the same time, like that seems like a health risk with your nostril holes of your skull being just there,
Gone.
just open.
Gone.
Just one cranberry and a
gone.
slingshot.
No,
and-
I know. I
and
see it and I don't want to.
get to
But I
brain.
want you all to see it.
I don't want to
Oddly
see it.
enough, it would be easier to get a COVID test.
It would be much easier.
I've seen him and a couple like him before. There's also like the lizard guy too. He's got the forked
Yeah.
tongue and
I mean-
the body covered in scales. He even talked about one time if they're able to actually figure out the technology to do so, to have a tail implanted on his body
That he could like
that he
have
could like
function
move
of.
and actually function.
I don't know how against I would be for having a tail.
Now that I think about it,
Now let me go further onto this. I think that if technology grows the way that I think technology is going to grow, I think that the throwback to episode one.
whoa.
I think that if the Neuralink actually does come to fruition the way that we're thinking it's going to come to fruition, that might actually be able to have cybernetic enhancement upgrades more likely to happen, because if you've already got a central link to data and to extra usage, like say you can reactivate dead limbs and things like that, who's to say you can't operate extra?
Yeah.
Like you could have like the multiple arm scenario where you've now got 4 arms. It makes you that much more productive on an assembly line.
I can be
I
Goro.
wipe my butt so fast.
Yes.
You would use a bidet.
True.
That's true.
Well, I mean, they don't have those at my work. I've got to go acoustic.
Oh my god!
Maybe that's not the right word.
Going back to
because I definitely don't want to go
Analog.
electric.
Analog. That's
Thank
the
you.
word.
That's the word I was looking for.
But you know, well, no, honestly though, just from I think acoustic probably sums what you do up actually pretty well.
The bathrooms are very echoey at work. Now, if we were going to modify our bodies to have fantasy, sci-fi, or animalistic, things, what would we want?
Like,
Because I already know
right,
what I want.
but like full on, like you're given a dollar amount that you have to spend modifying your own body.
Yeah.
Like it's
Far
like
would
this
you
is
go?
like this is a lifestyle for these people.
Oh, absolutely.
They pour money and resources, time, effort, healing, pain. Like the guy that did this cut his nose off.
Yeah. Well, the elephant.
It's scary.
I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but an elephant has a prehensile penis, which means it can pick up and move things around with its penis like it's an arm. I've found one video on YouTube, and the elephant is using his penis to scratch his
Like
belly.
its nose.
That's his face, Tony.
No.
That's on
it's
his face.
penis.
That's a nose.
It was by the back legs. It came out and it scratched his belly, and off he went.
Whoa.
I
I've
want to
done
be able
that.
to pick things up with my penis.
Whoa! Now that would be an impressive parlor trick.
Look,
Like
waistband technique doesn't count.
like you've got the guy at the party, like, and I'm that guy at the party that hates cutting his hands on twist top bottles, so he sticks it in like the crook of his arm and twists his arm, and all of a sudden the bottle cap just flies off. He's like, "Here you go." That'd be what I'd be doing with my wingus if at that point just oh you need that open. Hold on, watch this. Yeah, that was a pop top.
I want my wingby to stay in my pants. I think
yeah.
that's a.
Sorry.
No. I was just saying, like, everybody wants their wingby to do things, and I'm just like,
Oh
of
no,
course,
I was
stay
just
away.
saying, like, if it was what he said,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
my Wimby to do things.
I do.
I want my
that'd be
Wimby to
cool.
say wimp out. You know, I
Right.
want my Wimby to stay into my pants.
It'd be nice if mine could like fold pillowcases or those fitted sheets.
Oh, that would be a handy
Because
little.
you would need you kind of need a third hand to fold fitted sheets.
That is true. Mark.
I'm a guy that does not really like. I've never considered a tattoo. I've never gotten a piercing. So just the sheer idea of it is just so foreign to me.
You're
I'm not
pure.
saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not my thing.
Are you
But if I
saying
was made,
that you
I don't know what I
hate
could do.
Me and Austin?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying this, what we're talking about right now, is the extreme of like that kind of lifestyle,
Do
like
you
piercing
view
and tattoos.
us as lesser than yourself?
Well, of course
No.
he does.
Well,
I'm
and-
just
and
scared of
Dane
needles.
as well. Do you view
I'm just scared of
yourself
needles, that's all.
Like,
as
even-
superior to us three?
Hold on, even in a fantastical situation, you can't think of like an enhancement, that you'd want to have in your on your body. Like,
mean-
what kind of cybernetic? You got to have some kind of cybernetic enhancement you'd want to have on your
Well,
body
isn't
that
that
would.
different than like actually like having facial structure surgery to like make your
Well, no,
cheeks
it's-
flatter?
It's
It would-
body modification.
It would be a body modification. That's what I'm saying. If the Neuralink comes to fruition,
I think if technology is involved, it's a little bit of a cop out for us.
that sucks.
I know, because technology wise, like I can think of a bunch of things.
Right,
Like,
I'm
give me
talking
a
about,
bunch
like,
of,
surgery.
like mechanical wings,
like
or
that you have to
something.
heal from. You have to like.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
hair
you know?
implants.
Well, see, I was going to think of
That's a
something
good
like
one.
that.
Yeah.
Like instead of hair,
Same.
just to have like tentacles instead. Like
No, I need.
So
I need
instead of
wherever I grow
dreads,
hair,
yeah.
I want a
I
hairline
grow
that's,
tentacles,
that's
or
straight.
like grass.
You see, referencing
nature.
my Dragon Ball Z folks out there. The older I get, the more my hairline resembles Vegeta.
Yes.
and I want that. I want that strong Gohan. I want that Gohan hairline. I don't want that Vegeta hairline.
Oh, the idea of just like the slick back, like big tentacles
I've
back
seen
there
a
instead of
Vegeta
hair,
one
like
time.
that's interesting because they could do that, right?
I have no idea.
Surely.
What would you make the tentacles out of?
I don't know, man. Synthetic
talking-
skin.
Are we talking like Predator style or
Like, have you ever played Mass Effect?
no?
The Asari people. Well, the Asari are a race of alien that have like basically. Well, I don't know if I call them tentacles.
What
They're
about-
tentacle-like.
what about
but
what
they
Ahsoka has?
They don't move. Ahsoka.
Right, yeah, Ahsoka.
Yeah, well, yeah, but
Well, it's like an appendage style thing that's not
Yeah.
like tentacles, but it's just.
There's a name for it.
no,
isn't
Kit Fisto. That That's
rude.
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
that's what
something
I'm
like
talking
that.
about.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
Kit Fisto from Star Wars.
But I even like how or just like right where your face is, it's like skin, but you can see where it like transitions into like scales and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that might be kind of cool.
Only if I got gills.
Yeah, there's not. I can't think of many things I would want to. I don't know.
Not want to. You're forced
I'm
to.
made
That's why
to.
yeah,
Like,
this
what
is
am
a
I-
mad
yeah.
surgeon like
Right.
experiment type
Yeah.
scenario. Because, no, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't.
Right.
I'm scared of needle. I don't want a piercing.
I don't know. I kind of like your tentacle head idea. I
Yeah,
think I
that'd be
dig
cool.
that. Or wings.
I'm talking like get your like lower jaw removed or like get like
Yeah.
cut your
Like taken away. You're talking more taken away than given.
I don't know. I'm just blown away that a guy cut his nose off.
me too. I can't fathom doing it.
Me neither.
For any reason.
I mean, imagine when you like my nose gets gross throughout the day sometimes. I have to go blow my nose.
All
you
they'd
know?
have to
nasty.
do.
Ugh.
But like,
can't imagine.
could you,
Can you
like you could
imagine?
see it all. You could see like you can see the stalactites forming in there.
The
Bats in the cave.
It'd be
Speaking of
so
like-
hard to blow your nose. I had to learn how to blow my nose again after getting my septum piercing. Can't imagine not having a nose anymore. Trying to
Oh,
blow
and
it.
like, wouldn't you wake up and regret it? Like, oh my god, my nose.
And
Stuff
all they
would
would need
fall
is
into it.
that elf ear extra done along with that nose and so a little bit of teeth work, and you would have yourself a good bat with a
he
little
kinda-
little skin gray
This
and
guy,
bat.
Fernando,
Puppies.
kind of looks
Bat-
like a
little man
bat,
bat.
in a way. He
The-
kind of has that bat.
He
kinda
resembles
look.
Man Bat. Yeah.
the
From DC Comics.
lizard guy had his ears removed.
I don't like that at all.
No, that doesn't.
Yeah, to me
appeal
that
to
was
me.
even more wild.
Like I try not to be biased. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of why I mentioned like my gut reaction to it and
Right.
everything earlier. I'm not trying to be judgmental.
Yeah.
But it's like any person that's like not into that kind of stuff has to wonder like,
How
is it just like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a very, very few things I would want to do to me like that. Give me some elf ears. Give me some tentacle head.
And see, that's the thing with a lot of these people is that they just keep going. Like they look for new projects. Whereas some people like, I want to add on to my garage or something. They want to like add on to their face.
Yeah.
Well, as a partaker of body modifications, it does kind of become addictive sometimes, or it can almost become cathartic, depending on situations. Like getting tattoos, it feels good. I enjoy the way it feels.
Yeah.
Whereas piercing, it sucks. It's there and it's gone, but it's like a release of something. It's very cathartic for me. Whereas the tattoo's more like meditative.
Yeah. Well, it
So-
makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
humans have done these kinds of things throughout human history.
Right.
Oh yeah, just like
and for spiritual and like coming of age type reasons.
Yeah.
just
So
like lip
I mean, maybe there's
plates.
something to that. So
lip plates, neck
Yeah.
extension rings. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
they're in cultures all throughout the world to
Oh,
where people have
absolutely.
these,
Yeah.
they've got the lip gourds to where they'll actually stretch out the bottom lip, and the longer, bigger gourds they can fit in, the more masculine and or pronounced they are in the tribe. Like there's a lot of different things that the body modifications come into play with how people actually associate with the other people from their exact culture as well. So, I mean, they used to have cultures in Asia where they would have foot condensing as part of their body modifications. They would
China.
yeah, they would
Foot
have
binding.
Yep, the foot bindings, and they would actually take their feet down to almost like youth-size feet through crushing slowly the bones and reshaping the bones of the toes and the foot and everything else. So they had small, petite feet whenever they were wearing shoes. But if they ever took off shoes, it's
horrifying.
It is literally like you've watched the movie The Witches, and they're describing the way a witch's foot looks. Like he has no toes, and what was left of the feet is squared away. That's exactly how they're.
I think we should get this episode squared away. So thank you for listening, everybody, on iTunes and Spotify and Castbox and Pandora and Good Pods. There's so many things that we're on. It's ridiculous. Like, I forget how many we're on. It's a big list. But especially on iTunes, even if you don't listen to us on iTunes, you can go there and give us 5 stars. You can modify our rating there by adding a 5th star. There, we don't have just 4 stars. We've only gotten 5-star reviews. But add to that and give us a nice little note on there saying, yeah, they did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, or if you wanted to just, post your own body modifications, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Nerd Grapevine. Or if you wanted to get on our Patreon and maybe donate a little bit to the cause, as my father says, you can get a shiny, cool Nerd It Through the Grapevine sticker, as well as maybe being able to unlock future content that we haven't released to the public.
Best Friends period Tiny Ink period on Patreon.
And we're also on Discord. You can find us on there, live, uncut, and uncensored. We have a meme channel. We have a general chat. We even have a voice channel that we've not even utilized.
Yet.
Hit me up sometime, man. I'm always on the Discord after work. I mean, I'll talk to you, even if the other grapes won't. It'll be a great time. We'll be best friends.
Speaking of grapes, if life doth hand you grapes,
Yes.
Tiny,
He called an audible.
when life gives you grapes,
Yea, verily, I shall take said grapes and shove it under my skin as a modification and absorb the essence of the grape into my being and become one with the universe.
Tiny fell asleep this episode.
You idiot.